that year the drought was severe, so the place where I lived had lost the crop. Our family has moved to another place to live, hoping for it to be better. This is an old house, consisting of many rooms, old built-in architecture. It looks slightly dusty and messy, but better than nothing. My father said to clean. The whole family can live here too, because this is the house of a deceased friend left for his father. So the whole family cleaned up. More than half finished, the house was also a lot tidier. That night, the three of us slept together. My older sister was about 15 years old at that time, and I was my second sister. At that time, I was only 10 years old. Behind me was Chi, 6 years old. But for some reason, I was struggling and unable to sleep. I felt a sense of insecurity from the next room. The room is ancient. My family is not using it, so I haven't cleaned it up yet. That word kept emitting a creepy feeling. Losing sleep for a long time, I also gradually fell asleep. But not yet profound, I heard chuckles emanating from that room. Laughter growing louder. The door slowly opened. I began to panic, but still tried to stay silent in bed. And then, out of the room suddenly came out two girls, white faces, white eyes, and a strange smile. What scared me the most was that their feet weren't touching the ground. They were floating with red shoes. I panicked, but still tried to close my eyes and pretend I was sleeping as they slowly approached my mirror. I felt cold, and their gaze were on my three sisters. I don't know what they're going to do to us. I just laid there without moving. They kept whispering and smiling horribly. It seemed like they were choosing something. I was too young to notice the problem. In the end, it seemed like they chose me. I could feel a terrible cold hand touching my body. I tried to open my eyes slowly to look at the two sleeping next to me, hoping they would wake up to save me. But they were almost in a deep sleep, not knowing what I was facing. I glanced at them, but what I saw was genuinely awful. They're just two dry bones with old clothes. They were standing right behind me and seemingly tried to pull me somewhere. I was so scared, I hurriedly pulled the covers over my body and then fell asleep without realizing it. In the morning, everything was still as usual. But I still do not dare to open the blanket. After a while, little Lily woke me up when she saw that I wouldn't wake up. I quickly woke up, got out of my bed and blanket, and shouted about the two women who came out from that room last night. But my older sister may not believe what I said. She thought it was because I had a nightmare. No matter how I clung and cried, my sisters still doubted and didn't believe what I said. I recounted everything I experienced last night to her and hoped Nissan will come and take a look inside that room with a frightened expression. After hearing my mourning, Nissan reluctantly walked over to the room to examine the interior to reassure me that there was nothing inside. And indeed, Nissan opened the door of the room so I could come and see inside. Even though I was still terrified, I still walked over to her, hands clasping on Nissan and looking around inside the room. This is an old room, messy and thick. As my older sister said, there's no one inside. Maybe I'm dreaming. Because he waited for us for so long, my dad came in and saw three sisters standing in front of the other room door, so he urged us to come out for breakfast and asked what was going on. The oldest sister told him what I told her, and also told my dad that we went to see the room, but it's completely normal with no one inside. After hearing that, my father scolded us because just because of a stupid dream and not going to breakfast, my parents had to go to the fields to work. After breakfast, my second sister and my parents went to the field to harvest potatoes. Baby Lily is young, so she cannot accompany us. But since this is a peaceful countryside, we were not afraid for Lily. After a while, rain started pouring down. We also drove the baskets of potatoes home. The cart got a lot heavier because this year the potatoes had a good harvest. We help each other carry each basket of potatoes into the house. This year we'll make a lot of money. I also gradually forgot about yesterday's horror. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, so we quickly loaded the potatoes inside. Otherwise, they would be waterlogged. As soon as we opened the door and looked into the house, we saw little Lily playing in the yard, seemingly very happy. My mother was worried because of the heavy rain that little Lily could still play in front of the yard, but refused to go to the house to shelter from the rain. My mother was afraid she would fall sick. But little Lily seemed highly excited and told her mother that she was enjoying herself with her beautiful sisters. In response to my mother's question, I gradually realized what was unusual, and it seemed what little Lily said was true. There were lots of shoe marks on the ground. She was playing with someone in the yard of the house. That night, out of panic about the night before, I asked to let me sleep with my parents. Even though nothing strange had happened all night, I was apprehensive about some nervous feeling that I could not sleep. The following day, as well as every day, the whole family sat together for breakfast. But Lily didn't eat anything, even when my parents told her to. My parents asked that little Lily said that she would be taken away to eat well by some beautiful sisters. The carefree words of a child did not make my parents too concerned. That day, we also needed to go to the fields. As usual, my mother was afraid that a stranger would come to seduce Lily, so she told her not to open the door for anyone to come in. At that time, I was a child, so I didn't know what happened. I just felt a little insecure. So I asked my mother to bring Lily along with me that day. But my father seemed annoyed by it because little Lily often ran and jumped. It would take time to watch. The whole family would not be able to concentrate on farming. Everyone in the family was afraid of my father, so according to my father's instructions, it would not be a problem to lock the door carefully. My mother also thought so, so she obeyed my father. I'm alone in discomfort, but I'm too young to give my opinion. Before the door closed, I still remember clearly now, her white face, dark eyes and strange smile of Lily. She looked at me like a farewell. After that, we got into the familiar cart and left the house. After the field work, we could not see Lily playing in the yard anymore. When we came back home, it was strange that my mother called Lily repeatedly. After entering the house to search, my mother frantically ran out to inform everyone. The whole family was shocked. We split up to look for Lily. The older sister and I were worried about her. We ran around the village to see if anyone knew anything. My father entered the other strange room to search for her, and I was hoping that Lily was just playing hide and seek. But to our dread, little Lily was truly missing. After that, we stayed for a bit longer, then eventually decided to leave the heartbreaking place and move to a neighboring village. Years later, when I was much older, I heard that people came to clean and break the house down for farmland. Suddenly, while breaking down the fence, they accidentally bumped into something that seemed hard below the ground, so they decided to dig down to take a look below. After a while of digging, they discovered a big wooden coffin, which surprised everyone because ordinary coffins could not be that big. They opened the lid of the coffin to examine the interior and took the remains of the deceased so they could be buried somewhere else. All this so that the dead would have a proper place to rest. The coffin was indeed huge, holding at least 3 to 4 people. They also worked very hard to be able to open the lid to close the inside. But what was inside surprised them, and the story spread everywhere, which led my family to learn the reason why little Lily disappeared so mysteriously. Inside the coffin were the corpses of 2 women and a child. They were placed very neatly inside of it. and just like the workers described, there was a little baby girl who fitted the exact same description as Lily. The two women had turned to white bones, but the child looked like she had died recently. At that time, as I was older, I could speak my mind and realized Lily should have never been the one to get caught, because the one who should have gotten caught should have been me.